Okay, this is getting serious. We need to have a tough conversation about what's going on. The United States is on the cusp of a full-blown immigration crisis. It's one that President Biden himself launched when he promised during the campaign to surge asylum seekers to the border. Since then, everything that they have done has sent a signal all across the world that it's open season to come into this country, try to make a phony asylum claim. Now, Biden promised that he was going to come up with some kind of safe, compassionate, orderly way so people wouldn't have to try. But the core problem here is that his fundamental assumptions are flawed. And he should know this from having watched what happened in the Carter administration, when Jimmy Carter said, we need to bring everybody in from Cuba and Haiti who wanted to, and he got an uncontrolled boat lift situation called the Mariel boat lift. Now, political asylum was established in U.S. law under terms defined by international law that say you have to have a well-founded fear of persecution based on race, religion, ethnicity. In general, asylum is supposed to be something quite rare and unique. When you give somebody asylum, they've line jumped in front of millions of people who are waiting in line to come legally. If you create the incentive by broadening the definition of asylum and then setting up procedures that delay the process indefinitely, you create the magnet that draws people here. Safe, orderly, and compassionate, ensuring that people get their due process. That's what the advocates say they want. That's what the Democrats keep saying they want. But here's the problem, and this is not rocket science. Due process is only due process if it comes due, if it happens, if it actually occurs on a timely basis. These constitutional guarantees for procedural due process in criminal proceedings, specifically the Constitution, its Sixth Amendment guarantees the right to a speedy trial. Now, why does it do that? Lots of reasons in a criminal context. It benefits the criminal defendant because the evidence is fresh, the witnesses are still alive, all kinds of reasons why somebody should not be languishing in prison, uncharged, untried indefinitely. Just read the Count of Monte Cristo if you want to know why. Well, in the context of immigration proceedings, delay is exactly what you want. Delay is precisely the objective. Now, in the 1980s, again at the behest of the advocates, they took away immigration adjudications from the old Immigration Service and set up this court-like system in the executive branch called the Board of Immigration Appeals and the immigration judges in their courts. Now, it's a great idea in theory, but this is not rocket science, okay? If somebody comes in illegally and say they want a political asylum because their brother-in-law was threatened by some gang, okay, no state action there. Well, then they claim there's an absence of state action, and that's why these gangs operate. No state action involving the persecution. And they want to permanently stay. They want to get a claim for political asylum. Well, right now the Border Patrol is issuing these notices that say show up at an ICE office, ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement, in 60 days. Most of them don't show up. But of the ones who do, they get a court date 4, 5, 6 years down the line, during which time they get a work document, and the Biden administration says, oh, by the way, you can ask the government to bring in your relatives while you're waiting. Naturally, any children you have here will be U.S. citizens, courtesy of the erroneous interpretation of the 14th Amendment that strips away our ability to determine who becomes a citizen, regardless of the status of the parent. Anyway, you have U.S. citizen children. And they wait all this time. By the time they get a hearing, then they also have appeals. I mean, this is a mockery of justice. And obviously, this is absurd. And of course, the numbers are increasing all the time, and so the backlogs are increasing, and so the delays are increasing, and so more and more people find out. You come to the border, you make a phony asylum claim. Now, the way FAIR views this is that we need to reform asylum to go back to the original intention, which is you provide temporary protection for people who were here legally, but who cannot go back home because of changed circumstances that were unforeseeable at the time they came in. Or a rare group of people or person who, by virtue of making the claim in a centralized dictatorship back home where we have no diplomatic presence, the claim itself gives rise to the rebuttable presumption that they would be retaliated against if they went back home. That's political asylum. Political asylum does not involve entertaining asylum applications from people who've come through 4 or 5 safe countries actually even been out of the country involved. In this case, the Haitians who are showing up in Del Rio, Texas, have been in South America with work documents for years, are now coming up here because they believe it's open season. And the United States is not obligated to entertain asylum claims when anybody has passed through any country where they might have perfected that claim before. This isn't working. This can't work. Right now, there are hundreds of millions of people all over the world who are seeing what is happening. That if you bring a family member, you bring a family unit, even many single males are being released, females, it doesn't matter. The Biden administration is trying to accommodate this by accelerating the flow. This can never work. It can't work. Taxpayers, American citizens cannot withstand this continued flow. The Biden administration appears to be politically inept and unwilling to deal with the fact that they have created a massive immigration emergency that is only going to get worse and worse and worse. And any step they try to take, including flying some folks back to Haiti, is immediately met with irrational resistance by part of their political base. This cannot continue. This is an emerging catastrophic situation. Countries do not survive that allow this to happen. This is not a joke. Our country's borders are indispensable. Americans need to speak up about what is happening. This is not tolerable. This cannot continue. And whatever happens with the Biden administration, we at FAIR need to work with you and all Americans to make sure what is happening today can never be allowed to happen again. I'm Dan Stein, president of FAIR. Thank you for listening.